In your meetings over the last couple of days, did any of these issues come up?
Yes.
This is a liberal answering this question. I just want to make this abundantly clear. Topics of human rights and foreign interference were not brought up proactively by the Canadian Prime Minister.
Back in January, Mark Carney returned from China and told Canadians that issues like human rights and Jimmy Lai were raised in direct conversations with Chinese officials. The only problem with that is that after the Conservatives presented a forum question about this exact issue, the government's official response showed the exact opposite. And now Canadians, especially the diaspora community, want answers.
Let's take a look.
Hi, Prime Minister Tom Perry with CBC. I know that you're talking about China offering stability. There are still, of course, though, concerns in this country about human rights,
Yes.
about freedom of expression. I'm wondering where those fit into your calculations. Are these things that Canada just can't afford to think about because we've got to diversify our markets?
No, we fundamentally stand up for human rights. We stand up for democracy, territorial integrity, rights to self-determination. We take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. That means the following. We do engage with countries. We calibrate that engagement depending on our values and our interests, so that engagement is more narrow when there are those issues. We also have, if you will, a sort of value-based realism to the approach. In other words, we will engage on those issues. We'll engage with coalitions on those issues because that has more influence. And we will form coalitions with those countries with which we share those broader values. I will give you a current example of the last point, which is we are a member, as you know, of the Coalition of the Willing to back Ukraine. That is an example. Those countries in that coalition, over 30 countries, share values on a broad range, including all of those that I just mentioned. With other countries, our engagement is more narrow, it's more specific, and we keep within those guardrails. And for those relationships, we're very clear about where we will cooperate, where we differ. We'll have those engagements, but in a way that looks to make progress.
Can I just ask you a follow-up, sir? Like, in your meetings over the last couple of days, did any of these issues come up?
Yes. Yes.
Could you be a little more
that was your follow-up.
I guess so. How did you discuss that in your?
We're going to move on to the next question.
How did you discuss that in your questions?
We're going to move to the next question right after. En français, oui.
En français, oui, on a eu des discussions sur des sujets des droits humains, oui.
Next question, Maria.
Thanks. Maria Chang from Reuters. Just for a follow-up, can you tell us specifically how you raised these concerns about human rights? Did you address the issue of things like Jimmy Lai, concerns about Taiwan, violations of human rights in China in your discussions with President Xi?
Well, a couple of things. One is with respect to Mr. Lai, Canada led a G7 statement in the course of recent weeks calling for his humanitarian release, a foreign minister's statement. These issues were raised in our broader discussions over the past few days. With respect to one China and Taiwan and expectations are a long-standing policy. I think I answered this earlier, but just to be clear that we had a clear exchange in terms of what our policy is and a reaffirmation of, as I say, our long-standing policy. We have different systems. Let's take a step back. We have different systems, Canada and China. That has several consequences, one of which is the breadth of our engagement with China. We respect the differences in each other's systems. It does mean that our cooperation is more focused and more limited. But to have the effective relationship, we have the direct conversations. We don't grab a megaphone and have the conversations that way.
Did he just say that Canadians or Canada respects China's system I guess, in regards to human rights?
Well, he wasn't specific, which is the problem. Apparently, we respect the differences in our systems. You know, the differences in their communistic dictatorship, the fact that they, enslave people whenever they like, the fact that they use child labor, the fact that, they want to just walk in and take over Taiwan because they feel that Taiwan is theirs for the taking.
Well, the fact that they were literally trapping people inside their apartments during COVID.
Yeah, like bolting them inside of their homes. The fact that the entire country is basically under surveillance. The fact that this country reaches over into our country and harasses and just goes after people that have left China because China still wants to exert influence over them. Are those the differences that we respect, Mr. Carney? Because you weren't very specific.
Well, I certainly don't respect them.
What he was specific on is the fact that he didn't like taking the follow-up, ironically from CBC. He's like, what's going on here? They're on the payroll. What's going on here?
And at least to my understanding, the reason they don't permit like unlimited follow-ups or stuff like that is because not necessarily because of the question, but because the answer. They don't want to be on like this runaway train talking about the answer and then get another question related to it and another one and another one. So the fact that his answer was yes, in my opinion at least, they should have allowed a follow-up.
Well, the other aspect to this is, there's a certain number of reporters, they want to get questions in and they only have a certain amount of time too. But
when your answer is yes, like how long does it take to say yes? A fraction of a second?
Right. So we have the answer, folks, and they were very specific. Oh, we brought up these issues of Jimmy Lai and Taiwan and human rights. We brought these up. Okay, case closed, right?
Not so fast, because our MP, Ned Curick, asked a order paper question, and he got a different answer.
And just to give credit where credit's due, folks, this story was broke today by Blacklock's reporter. Feds admit PM misled media. There's another word for that that's more commonly used. He lied. Prime Minister Mark Carney misled media on his private meetings with Chinese communist leaders, Privy Council records show. Documents written by cabinet aides directly contradicted Carney's claims that he raised human rights and foreign interference with his Beijing hosts. This is the order paper question in question, ironically, and so this was tabled on March 13th, 2026, so exactly 1 week ago. The date this was asked was actually January 26th, so it actually took them a month and a half to get back to Mr. Curick. But this is what was asked. Now, it was presented by Kevin Lamoureux. So, Mr. Winnipeg himself, Kevin Lamoureux, Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons. This is a Liberal answering this question. I just want to make this abundantly clear. Now, this question, this order paper is pages long, so we're going to go through this very briefly and skipping a bunch of sections that are actually not that relevant to us. So, in the first question, Part C, at which of the meetings was the subject of human rights, foreign interference brought up by the Canadian minister in attendance? Their answer, the subject of human rights and foreign interference was not discussed in any of the bilateral meetings in the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food program. So that was one series of meetings. So one down. Not looking good for Mr. Carney right out of the gate. Next question. This is for a different group. At which of the meetings was the subject of human rights, foreign interference brought up by the Canadian minister in attendance? And this is specifically around Minister Anita Anand. As outlined in the purpose to Part B, during her meeting with His Excellency Wang Yi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the People's Republic of China, the Minister of Foreign Affairs discussed bilateral relations, trade and investment, sensitive issues such as human rights and foreign interference, and opportunities for bilateral engagement. So they're grouping that in with other issues. Why are they grouping that in with other issues? Maybe so they don't have to say that the answer is no. I don't know. But this is the interesting part about this. They don't get specific. Now, here's all the meetings. that previous question was actually referring to. So it shows the date, it shows the time, shows the people that were there. Mark Carney wasn't in any of these. So that's something to just keep note of. So next question, B, what are the details of all meetings attended by the Prime Minister, another minister, or anyone else representing the government on the trip, including the, and then it goes through and says, all right, so here's all the people in the meetings. Here's when it was, when the times were, what were the agenda items, if we can actually talk about them, and what were the results of each meeting. Okay, fine. So part C, at which of the meetings was the subject of respecting human rights and foreign interference brought up by the Canadian minister in attendance? So their answer on part 1, basically, we can't tell you because it's too sensitive. And on the second one, we can't tell you because it's too sensitive. Okay, we'll take that as a no. This is the big one. At which of the meetings was the subject of human rights, foreign interference brought up by the Canadian minister in attendance? Topics of human rights and foreign interference were not brought up proactively by the Canadian Prime Minister. So at any of the meetings that the Prime Minister was at, he didn't bring up human rights or foreign interference once.
And that's official from the government.
This is the Liberal government answering this.
This isn't an accusation. This is black and white on paper.
Right. So the Liberal government is saying that the Prime Minister, who holds human rights so close to his heart and was so concerned about human rights, going over to China, so concerned about Jimmy Lai, so concerned about our diaspora community, so concerned about the harassment of our citizens, so concerned about foreign interference, so concerned about the People's Republic of China issuing a bounty on Zhou Tai, that he brought up foreign interference and humanitarian issues exactly 0 times. He's so concerned about Taiwan and China's treatment of them. Brought it up not at all. So concerned about the Uyghurs. Didn't bring it up at all. This was the CBC and then Reuters asking him these questions. And I'm sorry, I call that a flat out lie to both the Canadian media and Canadians ourselves. So this begs the question. Did you talk about human rights when you went to Qatar? Probably not. Did you talk about foreign interference when you went to India? Probably not. Because here's the problem, folks. As Judge Judy always says, you lie to me once, I can't trust you anymore. Now, a lot of Canadians may say, well, I haven't trusted Carney this whole time. And that's a fair opinion to have. That's your opinion. But it's a lot different when an opinion ends up becoming fact, a provable fact from his own government. So when it comes to foreign interference and when it comes to humanitarian concern, Mr. Carney's credibility has literally dropped to 0. And it's indisputable.
It would be different if it was a conservative answering that question, but it's not. It was his own government answering that question. And like I said, it's there in black and white. Mark Carney, as you saw in the previous clip, claimed to have discussed these issues with the Chinese officials in his meetings, but again, the facts show otherwise.
So, this is going to be an interesting one, and ladies and gentlemen, the hounds of accountability have been let loose on social media. Kevin Lammer issued the response. So it's not like he can claim, some bureaucrat, it's, oh, well, I wouldn't use those words.
Or it was wrong or whatever. No, your name is on that order paper question.
So the other question is, if you didn't talk about that, Mr. Carney, what did you discuss with China?